Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Abrax and this is gonna be the first episode of a new series that I'm starting. Basically, I wanted to do a video about choosing your class, or profession as they're called in Guild Wars, and then I was looking up for similar videos on other channels. I found that most videos about choosing your class in Guild Wars basically were of people talking over the class selection screen or just showing random footage, and they gave sort of a general overview of the classes. But I think that if you really want to get an idea of each class and what they can do, the videos need to be all about the details. So I'm starting this series where hopefully we'll look through all the classes. Since I don't want to make a super huge video for each class, I'm gonna divide it into sections, looking first into the weapon and utility skills, then looking at the trait lines, and finally an overview of playstyles, roles, and the 2 elite specializations that each class has. So I'm gonna start this series looking at my main class, the Elementalist. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna be showing the skills here in the Heart of the Mist, and I've tried to pick a PvP build that doesn't have like active effects on it, so you won't see effects that are coming from the runes or the sigils, just purely what each weapon and each ability does, without any additional effects. Also, I'm gonna use a Berserker Amulet if you feel like trying the abilities of each class for yourself on the Heart of the Mist. And then my traits hopefully will not create any additional effects. So you will see a pure sort of version of each ability before you spend any traits to improve them. Okay, so basically let's talk about the unique feature of the Elementalist compared to the other classes. Maybe some of you will already know that in Guild Wars 2 you have weapon swap. So basically you can swap from one weapon to another, like let's say for example a greatsword, and then you can swap to an axe and a shield, right? So you have 200 weapons, 100 weapons. Elementalist, it's special in a way because it doesn't have weapon swap, but it has attunement swap, which is sort of like Elementalist version of weapon swap. So the thing is, Elementalist can use a certain amount of weapons, like most classes. Let's start with the dagger in the main hand and also in the offhand. So basically you have 5 abilities that the dagger gives you, right? But then you have a whole nother lot of abilities depending on the attunement you're in. So as you can see, I switch from fire attunement to water attunement, and I gain a new set of abilities, right? 1 to 5. Then if I do the same to air attunement, the same thing will happen. I will have a brand new set of abilities connected to this attunement in particular, right? And finally the earth attunement will do the same. And then I have 5 different abilities resulting from this attunement, right? Okay, so let's start with the first weapon that you have as an Elementalist. Right when you start the game, you're gonna have the first attunement, the fire attunement, and then you're gonna have a dagger on the main hand. So basically the main hand, as some of you may know, will give you access to 3 abilities, and the offhand will give you access to the last 2 abilities. So now we're gonna first look at the main hand through all the attunements. So basically you have Dragon's Claw, which is your very first ability when you start the game. So it's sort of like 3 projectiles that can hit your enemy. Depending on how you are targeting the enemy, the 3 may hit, maybe 2 of them or even 1 of them. For example, if in this case, as you can see, only 1 of them is hitting and the other 2 are passing through, right? So it's all about positioning, and obviously if you're really close to your target, you're gonna hit the 3 of them. Okay, so that's the basic attack, Dragon Claw. Then you have Drake's Breath, which is sort of like a condition damage attack. So basically you spit or breath fire on your foe, right? Let's see it in action. It has like a generous amount of burning stacks, and the cooldown is fairly low, so you can keep burning your enemy with this. Pretty cool ability. So that's basically it for the second slot. Then you have Burning Speed, and here it does a lot of things. First of all, let's see the attack so you get an idea. It's basically you slide in and you do an explosion and you leave a trail of fire, right? So let's now read to the tooltip. It says, slide forward and blast the area, leaving behind a line of fire that burns foes. So basically, you will do blast damage, and then if the foes or the enemies are standing on the burning line, they are going to be receiving flat damage and also a little bit of burning. So let's see it in action. So as you can see, the golem is taking damage, but we didn't saw like the full extent of the blast damage, right? So let's do it one more time. This is sort of like a skill shot ability, because you are gonna have to calculate how distant from your foe you're standing with, so so the blast damage basically connects with your enemy, right? So I think there we go. So you saw the damage impact there, and then the golem is still taking damage from the burning line or burning trail that the ability leaves, right? Okay, so now we're gonna change attunements, and we're gonna have 3 new abilities. This is the water attunement, and attune to water to gain superior support and healing abilities. So basically, water attunement, as you can tell, has healing stuff built into it. It also has a bit of CC as well in the form of chills, which is a condition that basically makes your enemy slower, and the cooldown of its abilities recharge slower as well. So this is themed all around the water as sort of a like healing power, and also the ice of sort of like some sort of form of control, right? So the very first attack you have on main dagger water attunement is Vapor Blade, which is probably one of the longest range attacks on the dagger main hand.
I've got a lesson to teach you.
As you can see, it's sort of a boomerang that goes and comes back, so it actually hits your enemy twice. Once when it's going, and once when it's returning. And it also inflicts vulnerability, which is a condition that basically stacks 1% more damage for each stack. So this enemy is going to be receiving up to between 10 and 11% more damage from all sources, as long as the vulnerability keeps stacking, right? So that's Vapor Blade. And then we have Cone of Cold, which you're going to see sort of resembles the Drake's Breath that we saw on the Fire Attunement. So basically this is a power-based attack, and it also has a little bit of healing. So you're gonna heal yourself and your allies that are standing near the range of the attack with this. Let's see it one more time. And then we have Frozen Burst, which is sort of like a melee range ability that will shield your enemy. And it's also a combo finisher, Blast. So let's use it on another golem. Let's see here. Boom. So there you go. The golem is chilled now. A combo finisher, Blast, is something that combined with a combo field will produce another effect. We're gonna see more of that when we go through the Elementalist sort of playstyles and roles and things that he can bring to a party, right? Okay, so that was the main hand dagger on the water attunement. Now let's go to the air one. A new set of abilities. The very first one, this is Lightning Whip, which is one of the most powerful auto attacks for the Elementalist Dagger weapon. It's sort of like a whip attack that has like a couple quick pockets of damage for each cast, right? So you can see 1, 2, 1, 2. That's basically it. Very straightforward, very simple. Then we have Lightning Touch, some damage, and then we'll apply Weakness, which is a condition that will basically make your target weaker. Basically, it's gonna make your enemy hit a lot less harder. So Lightning Touch is also pretty straightforward. It does a bit of power damage and then inflicts weakness on our target. And finally, we have Shocking Aura, which is something that you put on yourself, and if the enemies attack you while you have the Shocking Aura, which lasts for 4 seconds, they will be stunned, and basically their actions will be interrupted, right? So it's sort of like a defensive ability. Let's see it in action. There we go, that's the Shocking Aura. And finally, on the Earth Attunement, we're gonna have the auto attack, which is Impale. It has a little bit of direct damage and also conduit damage through bleeding, right? So basically you pull a spike out of the ground and you can start attacking your enemy, putting bleeds on it. That's basically it. The second ability is Ring of Earth. Basically, Ring of Earth resembles Impale, but it's sort of like on a circular fashion, right? And also, not only it will put bleeding, but also will cripple the enemy. Cripple is a condition that will make the enemy go slower. And it also blocks missiles, but to be honest, the animation is really quick, so I have never seen somebody use it as proactively as to block missiles. To me, it basically applies bleeding, applies cripple, that sort of thing. So let's see it in action. It can hit up to 5 targets, so let's see if we can hit both of these golems with this ability. There we go. So we hit the 2 golems with it. That's basically it. And then we have Magnetic Grasp, which is sort of a gap closer, right? Remember that dagger is sort of like a mid-range melee weapon, so you are gonna want to be having gap closers to get close to a fleeing enemy or whatever, right? So, okay, so Magnetic Grasp immobilize your foe, making them vulnerable to a magnetic leap attack. So in Guild Wars, there's a bunch of abilities that are sort of like connected to each other. In this case, if you manage to immobilize your foe with Magnetic Grasp, then you access another ability, which is Magnetic Leap. Let's see it in action. So basically, you sort of throw a projectile, and if it connects, you have Magnetic Leap, which will get you closer to your enemy, right? So let's see it one more time. Magnetic Grasp, your enemy is immobilized, it can move, and then you can Magnetic Leap right into it. Now let's see the abilities for the offhand dagger, because dagger is a weapon that you can equip either in your main hand but also in your offhand. So let's check those out. Okay, so now as you can see, I have 2 more skills here which belong to the Dagger Off Hand weapon, right? So first of all, let's start with Ring of Fire, damage nearby foes with a Ring of Fire, burning foes that pass through it. So you have an initial burning, and then if the enemy goes either in or out of the Ring of Fire, it will burn again. So let's see it on this golem. Basically, it puts a combo field, fire, and it also burns the enemies that are closer when you cast the attack. And then you have Fire Grab, which basically damage foes in a cone in front of you and deals more damage to burning foes. So you want to use this ability on a burning foe to really get the full damage potential of it, right? So a popular combo is putting a Ring of Fire down, and then you Fire Grab onto your enemy and it hits for a lot of damage, right? Then we have the Water Attunement, Frost Aura, pretty basic ability. It will give you 10% reduced incoming damage, which is always helpful. And also, if you get hit by it when you have the aura, you will shield enemies. So this is a really nice defensive option, and it also kind of helps you get away of enemies. If they're chasing you, trying to kill you, maybe you want to put this Frost Aura up. So if they touch you, they would get chill, and they will be slower, and basically you can escape more easily. And then finally we have the Cleansing Wave, which will heal you, remove 2 conditions from you. So basically you heal yourself and nearby allies, and you remove conditions. So it's a pretty cool ability. Let's see the Air Attunement. Ride the Lightning is probably one of the coolest looking and more like staple abilities of the Elementalist. You ride the lightning to your foe, then strike all nearby foes with an electrical burst. If a foe is hit by the burst, the skill recharge is halved. Okay, so basically this skill will allow you to move really fast, like this. But if you hit an enemy while using Ride the Lightning, the cooldown will be halved. So let's hit this golem with the Ride the Lightning. And as you can see, the cooldown is only 15 seconds. So you can use this ability to either engage an enemy or get away from a fight that you know you're not going to be able to win, right? And finally we have Updraft, which is a launch, sort of like a CC ability. You have to execute on melee range, right? Basically you can step closer to the enemy, and then it will launch the enemy and keep it on the ground for a few seconds. It will also grant you swiftness and make you evade 1 second. And then finally we have the Earth Attunement. And finally we have the Earth Attunement for the offhand dagger weapon. Basically you have Earthquake, trigger a quake on your location, knocking down and dealing massive damage. So this is sort of like another CC similar to Updraft, but this time you're gonna knock down 2 seconds your enemy, and it's also a combo finisher blast. So let's see it in action. There we go, so the enemy stays a couple seconds on the ground, CC it basically. And then finally, this is one of the coolest animations that the Elementalist of Hand Dagger has, which is called Churning Earth. Make the earth churn, crippling nearby foes and before unleashing a seismic wave that damages and bleeds them. The first part, where you cripple foes in an area, and then it finishes with a huge blast that deals a lot of power damage and puts 12 stacks of bleeding. So it's a really deadly attack. So as you can see, it has a pretty long range, 360 range, and it had a couple of parts. The first one, cripple the enemy, and then the big explosion. That's it for the weapon skills on both the main hand and the offhand dagger. Now let's have a look at the other weapons that the Elementalist has access to. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Scepter, which is sort of like a mid-range, kind of long-range weapon for the Elementalist, and it has a lot of things that have very distinct effects and playstyles. So first, let's look at the fire attunement. We have Flame Strike, which is sort of like a condition kind of attack. Strike your foe with a flame and create an area that delivers a lesser attack for a short time later. It will burn the enemy once and then burn it again like 1 second later, right? So you can chain this and stack a lot of burning on your enemy. You can do it while moving. Remember that a lot of abilities in Guild Wars can be cast while moving. Then we have Dragon's Tooth. Drop an explosive Dragon's Tooth on your foe. So this is a ground AoE sort of ability that you can choose where you want to put it. You cast a huge Dragon Tooth that will impact the area, dealing a strong power damage and then leaving a bit of burning. This is also a combo finisher blast. So let's see it one more time on the light golem. And there we go. And finally we have Phoenix, which does a lot of things. Basically, you remember Vapor Blade, which acted sort of like a boomerang. Phoenix is that same sort of thing. It will go a distance and then come back to you. So release a fiery phoenix that attacks foes in a line before exploding and returning to you, curing a condition and granting you vigor. So let's use it. Let's see it in action. Phoenix goes, hits the enemy, comes back to you. It will cure one condition that you have at the moment and will also grant you a boon, which is called vigor, that basically will make your dodge regen faster, right? So Phoenix is it's sort of like a skill shot as well. Depending on where do you put it, it might hit the enemy once, like in this case. But if you put it right behind the enemy, it will hit in maybe 3 times. The first time when it passes through, the second time with the blast near the enemy, and then the third time when it comes back to you. So you can actually pull a lot more damage with Phoenix depending on how you use it, right? So now let's make Phoenix explode right behind the enemy to see the 3 pockets of damage. Okay, so as you can see, it hit 3 times instead of 1 time, right? Now let's look at the water attunement for the Scepter. You have Ice Shards. Fire 3 Ice Shards at your foe. This is a really quick attack that will hit the enemy 3 times separately, right? Then you have Shatterstone. Cast a Shatterstone that will explode at a target area and will also apply vulnerability. So basically you put down this, and after a few seconds it will explode, dealing damage and putting 5 stacks of vulnerability. So it's kind of like a Dragon's Tooth, kinda. Let's see it one more time. And then you have Water Trident, which basically will heal you, and put Regeneration, which is healing over time buff, right? And you can use this up to 5 target allies. It will also do a little bit of damage, but that's neglectable. Basically this is a healing ability. So basically you just throw this on yourself or on an ally that you want to heal. Then we're gonna go through Air Attunement. Arc Lightning. Cast an arc of electricity at your foe. The longer this is maintained or connected between you and your foe, it will deal increased damage. So as you can see, it has 3 damage stages, stage 1, 2, 3, and each time it will deal more damage to the enemy, right? So this is it basically. It connects you to the enemy and it will start doing a lot of damage, right? Let's see it one more time. Now the cool thing about this is that it says number of targets 3. So basically if you align this in a way that you will hit multiple enemies, it will do so. So now I'm gonna target the light golem, but I'm also gonna be hitting the medium golem as well. Okay, so as you can see, I'm hitting both enemies, and if there was a third enemy standing here, it will hit the 3 of them, right? Okay, so the second ability is pretty straightforward. Lightning strike. Strike your foe with lightning. There we go. It's actually probably the most straightforward ability that Elementalist has. The cool thing though is that you can cast it while you are using another ability. For example, if I'm using Arc Lightning, I can cast Lightning Strike on top of it and it will not cut the channeling of Arc Lightning, right? So you can use Arc Lightning and then Lightning Strike on top of it for a good amount of burst damage. And finally, Blinding Flashes basically functions exactly the same as Lightning Strike, although it doesn't do any sort of damage. It just blinds the enemy, and a blinded enemy will miss the next attack, right? So you can do the same thing. You can use Arc Lightning and then Blinding Flash on the enemy and it will be blinded, okay? Finally, on the Earth Attunement, we have abilities that are leaning towards the condition damage sort of thing, like with bleeds and stuff, and also putting blindness. The auto attack is stun shards. Fling stun daggers at your foe to bleed them. So basically it's a channeled attack which will cast 3 times and will do a bit of direct damage and also put a lot of bleed stacks on your enemy, okay? So that's basically stun shards. And then you have rock barrier, which is sort of like a 2-way attack, like a chain, right? So envelop yourself in a stony barrier that improves toughness. So basically toughness is an attribute that will make you receive less direct damage, and with this you can use this ability and increase your toughness by 250%. Will last 30 seconds, but you can also hurl the rocks from your barrier at your foe. So you will lose the toughness bonus, but you can hurl these rocks and put more bleeding stacks. Okay, so let's see it. So basically it will start to throw the rocks that you used as a shield to your enemy, and you can use it as an offensive ability as well. And finally you have Dust Devil, which is sort of like Blinding Flash, but this comes with a little bit of direct damage and will also blind your foes, but this can actually hit multiple foes on a path because it has a number of targets from up to 5 targets, right? So this is basically the attack. It will go forward and blind enemies on a straight line. So those are the Scepter abilities, and now let's look at the focus weapon on the offhand, which is a weapon that you can only use in the offhand. So the first ability on the fire attunement is Flame Wall. Create a wall of flame at the target area that burns foes. If you put this below a foe, it will damage it and burn it. It seems sort of like a lackluster ability, but it has other usages. Mainly you can combine projectiles that pass through this flame wall and you get burning projectiles and other sort of things that we will have a look to in another video, right? Okay, and then we have the fire field, which will basically burn the enemies that hit you while you have the shield, and will also grant you might, which is something that will make your attacks basically be more powerful, right? So you can use the fire field on any situation that where you think you're gonna be receiving hits from the enemy. So let's see it one more time. There we go, that's the fire field. Now let's go to the water attunement on the focus, and you have Freezing Gust, which will chill your foe for a brief time, and it has a fairly substantial range of 900. So basically you can kite enemies with this, chilling them, or you can also catch up to them more easily, right? There we go, so it applies a little bit of chill, that's basically it. It's limited to 1 target only as well. And then you have Comet, which drops a comet of ice on the targeted foe, damaging and dazing foes in an area. So basically this will interrupt your targeted foe and any foes on 180 radius around that foe, right? And it also has a range of 900 and it's a combo finisher blast. So let's see how it looks. That's Comet. Then we can go to the air attunement, and you have a couple really important abilities to use for the Elementalist. This is the swirling winds. Create a swirling wind that destroys projectiles. So basically this is a really powerful defensive tool for when you are being hit by projectiles from all directions. Basically you put this swirling wind around you, and any projectile that's gonna try to come through this will get automatically destroyed. So it will save you a lot of times, especially against enemies or classes that are very reliant on projectiles and they are gonna try to shoot you from afar. You can pop the swirling winds and basically forget about those projectiles, right? And then you have Gale, which has it's a knockdown, it's another CC ability, and it has a range of 900. So it's a pretty powerful CC that you can use on enemies that are far from you. Basically you throw them into the ground that way. And finally, on Earth Attunement, for the focus, you have probably the two most powerful defensive abilities that the Elementalist has access to: Magnetic Wave and Obsidian Flesh. Let's look at first at Magnetic Wave, because it does sort of a lot of things at the same time. So it has a little bit of damage, and it also applies Cripple to nearby foes in a 300 radius, right? But it will also cure 3 conditions from you, and will also reflect projectiles for the duration, which is 3 seconds. Okay, so it does a lot of things. You can use it to cripple your enemies, you can use it to kite enemies that are trying to get to you, you can use it to cleanse conditions, you can use it to reflect projectiles. It's probably one of the most versatile abilities, not only for Elementalists but in the whole game. So there I did a bit of damage and crippled the enemy, but I also had like a buff that if anyone was shooting me with anything, I would have reflected that thing, and if I had any conditions, it will have cleansed up to 3 conditions. Okay, so that's Magnetic Wave. And finally we have Obsidian Flesh. Envelop yourself in stony armor, making yourself invulnerable. So basically, if you pop this, they cannot hit you, like you won't get any sort of damage from attacks. It's a lifesaver. You can use it preventively or reactively, depending on which situation you find yourself into. And that's it. That's Obsidian Flesh, and those are the abilities for the focus on all the attunements. So now let's look at the final core Elementalist weapon, the Staff. So the Staff is the only two-handed weapon that the Elementalist has access to, and this is gonna be your range AoE sort of area control weapon, right? Staff is all about the AoE skills, both dealing damage, controlling the enemy, supporting your allies, and it's packed with a lot of really powerful attacks, especially in the fire attunement, right? So let's start by the fire attunement. Fireball. Cast a fireball that explodes on impact and hits multiple foes. So basically, Staff has a lot of range. It has 1200 range, so you can basically attack foes from really far. So as you can see, that's the fireball. But if I was using this ability on, let's say, this golem that has a few golems near it, it will hit not only the golem that I'm targeting, but also the golems that are nearby. So as you can see, it's hitting up to 3 golems. So that's basically the fireball. Then you have the lava font. Make lava erupt from the targeted area. Duration 4 seconds. Combo field fire. Basically this puts like a pulsing AoE area that will damage your enemies. Here we are gonna use it on the target golem, and as you can see, it damages. It has like maybe up to 3 or 4 packets of damage, I think, and it also has a number of targets up to 5. So if I put it in the middle of all these golems, I will be hitting all of them. So basically 5 golems are getting hit. It's a pretty powerful AoE attack, and you can use it pretty frequently. This is where most of your damage will come from if you're using the staff on the fire attunement. So that's basically Lava Font. Then you have Flame Burst, that will burn foes at a targeted location, and it has a number of targets of 5 as well. So basically it applies like the same principle, right? If I choose this golem and I use the Flame Burst, I will burn this golem, but that will also be burning the golems that are nearby. So let's see. And as you can see, there's a lot of burning applied to all these enemies, right? So then we have Burning Retreat. Quickly roll backward, leaving behind a line of fire that burns. So Burning Retreat will basically allow you to dodge attacks or attack from afar, be more safe, etc. So it's sort of like a defensive mobility ability, right? But it will also leave a fire trail that if your enemies step on it will be damaged, and you can also use it as a combo field fire. So let's see, Burning Retreat. And as you can see, it will make you go a lot of distance with it. And finally we have one of the most powerful AoE attacks in the game, Meteor Shower. Call down a Meteor Shower onto the target area. It has 24 impacts, can hit up to 3 targets with it, and it has a 9-second duration, okay? So basically this is a big AoE attack. You will be rooted when you're casting it, and then meteors from the sky will come down and start hitting everything or anything that is on the area, dealing a lot of damage. So as you can see, staff is really designed to bring the area of effect type of gameplay for the Elementalist, and you will see that most of the abilities on the other attunements have some sort of AoE multi-target design philosophy to it. Then on the water attunement you can see a lot of support abilities for your party, starting with the auto target, which is Water Blast. Spray a jet of water at your foe that splashes to heal nearby allies. So this doesn't do much damage. You wouldn't really use this for DPS, but it has a healing component, so it might help you sustain your allies or yourself when you attack, right? So basically it will splash water, and if I had lost some health, it will start healing me basically, and will also heal up to 5 targets that are nearby on a radius of 240. So that's basically it. Then we have Ice Spike. Drop a giant Ice Spike on foes to make them vulnerable. This is probably the only offensive ability on this attunement for the staff, because it has a really nice amount of damage. So basically you can target this. It will apply 5 stacks of vulnerability, and it's also a combo finisher blast. Let's see it one more time. Then you have Frozen Ground. Coat the target area in ice, chilling foes that enter it. So basically this is a 5-second duration, 300 radius combo field ice, which is unblockable as well and will chill enemies. So this is pretty useful for stopping a group of enemies on their trail and chilling them. So basically you see that a lot of golems are getting chilled by this ability. That's basically it. And then finally you have Healing Rain. Call down a Healing Rain at the targeted area, running regeneration to allies and curing conditions once every 3 seconds. So this is a big area that will help your allies. It will regen them, healing them, it will remove conditions, and it's also a combo field water that can be used with combo finishers like Blast to get extra healing on your allies, right? So this is Healing Rain. Basically anyone that's going to be standing in the Healing Rain will have Condition Cleanse, Regeneration. It's a pretty awesome support AoE sort of ability to have. And that's basically it for the Water Attunement. Now let's head to Air. Chain Lightning, hit multiple foes with arcs of Chain Lightning. So basically this is an attack that starts with like a single projectile, but it will bounce between enemies. So it's sort of like an AoE, but it's mostly a chained power-based attack, right? And it has a lot of range, 1200. As I attack this golem, the attack will chain to other golems that are nearby, as you can see. So this is a really cool attack when you have multiple enemies that are like moving a lot and they won't be standing still on your regular AoE attacks. You can attack them using the chain lightning, and the lightning will basically chain through the enemies and do a lot of damage to multiple enemies, right? Then you have Lightning Surge. Charge a Lightning Surge that damages and blinds foes near your target when it discharges. So this is sort of like a channeled attack that will blind foes, do a lot of damage, and it can also hit up to 5 targets. So let's say I choose this golem, and then I use the Lightning Surge. So as you can see, it hit a couple more golems and also blinded them. Pretty good attack. Also has a lot of damage as well. It's a huge damage coefficient. Then you have Gust, which is a CC ability, push foes backward with a burst of air. And it has also like a limit of 5 targets. So if I don't know, let's see, if I select this golem and I use Gust, it will basically push the golem and a few more foes that are behind it. So this is like a CC attack that you want to use on foes that are getting too close. You want to keep them at bay, so basically you push them with Gust. Then we have Windborne Speed. You and nearby allies gain swiftness while curing crippled, immobilized, and chill. So basically this is a really useful support for your team. You can use Windborne Speed. Let's say we have this guy here. If I use Windborne Speed, he's gonna get swiftness as well, and swiftness is a boon that basically will make you run faster, and it can be used to disengage or to engage, fight. So you can use this up to 5 targets and will also cure crippled, immobilize, and shield, which are conditions that basically hinder your ability to move. So you can use this to get rid of them and basically move freely and move faster as well. And finally we have the static field, which will create an area that if the enemies try to cross the area or get out of it, they will get stunned. So think of it as sort of like an AoE static shield, right? So let's put it on these golems. You won't see the golems getting stunned because they are not moving, but if they were mobs or players or any sort of enemy trying to get out or get in the static shield, they will get CC'd as well. And finally we have the Earth Attunement, Stunning, Hurl a Rock and Weaken your foe. Basically pretty straightforward ability. It's an auto attack limited to 1 target that will also weaken your foe. Then you have Eruption, shake the ground until it erupts and damages foes. So this is a big blast, sort of like churning earth in a sense. You put down this attack, and after a while it will explode, dealing big damage and also putting a lot of bleeding stacks and cripple on your foe. So this is pretty deadly if you're standing on top of it. Let's see it one more time. There we go, that's Eruption, and it's also a combo finisher blast. The third ability is Magnetic Aura that will reflect projectiles with magnetic energy. So basically you put this aura anytime that you know that you're gonna be getting hit with projectiles, so you can reflect them and basically turn the tide of the fight with it. Then you have Unsteady Ground, create an unsteady ground that foes cannot cross. Okay, so you can see this golem is moving, and you can use the unsteady ground to sort of put a wall, and the golem won't be able to pass through, right? So it's it's sort of like an area denial that won't allow your enemies to get near you or to follow you. It's a pretty cool ability. And then finally we have Shockwave, create a shockwave that bleeds and immobilizes your target. So this is another sort of CC. Basically it will catch any enemy on its path, immobilizing them and also putting a lot of bit of bleed on it. And that's basically it for all the weapons that the Elementalist can wield on its core specialization. Now let's look at everything that the utilities can offer to us. Okay, so now let's look at the Signets, which are the very first type of abilities that you can access to as an Elementalist. Actually, the very first utility or healing skill that you get is the Signet of Restoration. The thing with Signets is that they have both a passive effect and an active effect. So basically the passive effect is always happening as long as you have the Signet equipped, and the active effect will only happen if you use it, but it will make you lose the passive effect. So you have to decide on which occasion you can actually pull off the active effect, or if you rather stay with the passive effect. So with the Signet of Restoration, you can either grant health to you every time you cast a spell, or you can use it actively to heal yourself for for an amount of healing, right? So let me attack this NPC so I can receive a little bit of damage. So there, as you can see, I'm losing health, but every time I cast, I'm gaining 202 health. Then we have the Signet of Fire, which passively improves your critical chance by, I think it's around 7% when you are at level 80. So this basically will increase your chance of having critical hits, but if you use it actively, it will burn your foe, as we can see here. And that's basically it. Then we have the Signet of Water, which will cure conditions every 10 seconds. So basically, as long as you have a condition which puts you in combat, every 10 seconds the Signet will remove one of your conditions. And if you use it actively, you will lose the passive ability, but you will be able to shield your enemy. So let's actually wait for the golems to respond. There we go. You can use it to shield your enemy, but you will lose the passive effect. Then we have the Signet of Earth that will improve your toughness, giving you like some passive defense through toughness, which reduces the damage that you receive. And if you use it actively, you will inflict bleeding and also immobilize your target. And let's see it in action. And finally, we have the Signet of Air that will passively grant us 25% increase in movement speed. And if we use it actively, we can blind our foes, but most importantly, we have a stun break, which is not really listed as the main feature on the tooltip, but is probably the most useful feature. So basically, if you use the active effect of the Signet of Air, you will break a stun, and you will also blind your enemy and apply vulnerability to it. Now let's look at the Signets. Signets are really special because they have different effects depending on the attunement you are currently in. For example, let's see, we have the heal, the Glyph of Elemental Harmony that basically will heal you for an amount, but will also grant you some sort of benefit depending on the attunement that you're currently into. So if you use it on fire, it will give you might. If you use it on water, it will give you regen, which is basically healing over time. If you use it on air, it will give you swiftness, which is a movement buff. And if you use it on the earth attunement, it will give you protection, which decreases incoming damage for a period of time. Then we have the Glyph of Storms, which basically creates storms with different effects and conditions depending on the attunement. If you use it on fire, you will create a firestorm at the targeted area. So we can see here. If we use the Storm Signet on water, it will create a storm that will chill enemies. If we use it on air, it will create a storm of lightning that will apply vulnerability to enemies. And this is probably the hardest hitting power-based of all these storms that you can get. And finally, if we use it on earth, it will create a sandstorm that will bleed foes and also blind them. So let's see this last one here. Then we have the Glyph of Elemental Power, which basically inflicts conditions on your next few strikes based on your attunement. For example, if I use this glyph on fire attunement, then all the attacks that I'm going to be doing next will apply burning stacks. But the cool thing is that I don't have to remain on fire to get the burning stacks. I can actually use this on fire and my air attacks will apply burning. So you can do any sort of combo. Maybe you can use this on, let's say, on water that will apply shield. But if you don't want to stay in water, you can swap to any other attunement and you will still apply chill. So let's see it one more time. If I use this on earth attunement, it will put bleeding stacks. So I'm going to use it on earth, but I'm going to swap to fire. So then my fire attacks will also apply bleeding for an amount of time. So I use it on earth and then on fire. As you can see, I'm applying both bleeding and burning. And then we have the Glyph of Lesser Elementals that allows you to summon small elementals that will help you, right? So basically, if you use it on fire, you will summon a lesser fire elemental, probably the most suited to deal damage. And you have also another ability. Command your fire elemental to invoke a burst of flames, granting might to allies and nearby foes. Let's say we're going to attack this golem now, and the elemental is going to do an attack. There we go, applying cripple and also granting me might. So let's see another example of the Glyph of Lesser Elementals. Now I'm going to use it on the Water Attunement, and we're going to get a nice elemental that can chill the enemies. And finally we have the Glyph of Renewal, that basically it has a really big cooldown, but for a good reason, because it will revive a target. If you use it on the Fire Attunement, it will revive a target when it's downed. If you use it on Water Attunement, it will revive an ally with full health. If you use it on Air, it will revive and teleport an ally to your location. And if you use it on Earth, it will revive up to 3 allies around you. So basically, this will help you to bring back to the fight your defeated allies or downed allies, and you can use it on different attunements for different effects depending on the situation. And finally we have the Elite Glyph, which is the Glyph of Elementals that will summon an elemental based on your attunement. So this is basically as the Glyph of Lesser Elementals, but these are way more powerful and have way more useful abilities. So let's use probably the most used one, which is the Fire one, that has a really big attack that will burn and do a lot of damage to enemies. So let's see it in action. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Cantrips, which are basically defensive abilities that you can use to get yourself out of sticky situations, right? So we have the Ether Renewal, which will heal yourself and cure conditions with every pulse. So it has 8 pulses. Basically, if you are filled with conditions, you can use this to get rid of all of them and also heal yourself. Then we have the Lightning Flash, which is another really staple Elementalist move, which will allow you to teleport to a targeted area and also do a bit of damage on it. So I'm going to teleport right in on top of this golem, and it has a fairly long range, as you can see, 900. Basically, I teleport to the selected place, and I also do fairly a good amount of damage where I land, right? Then we have Cleansing Fire, that will basically cure 3 conditions, but will also burn. Imagine that I have, I don't know, 3 conditions that I want to cleanse, but I can cleanse them and also burn the enemies around me, right? And then finally we have the Mist form, which will morph you into an invulnerable vaporous mist for a brief time. This is your out of jail card. This will save you a lot of times when you're on dire situation. It stun breaks and it will make you invulnerable, and will also give you a movement speed increase of 66%. So if you see yourself surrounded by enemies and you're desperately trying to get out, you can pop the Mist form and basically get the hell out of that place. Then we have the Armor of Earth, that will protect you with an Earth armor and gain protection and stability. So this is also a stun break, will grant you protection, and most importantly it will grant you 10 stacks of stability, which is a buff that will allow you to basically absorb the CC or control attacks that the enemy will try to inflict on you. So if you have stability, you cannot be knocked down, pushed back, pulled, launched, stunned, dazed, float, sunk, feared, or taunted. So this is a fairly strong ability that will break a stun, give you protection, and also give you stability, and it looks like this. And finally we have the Elite Cantrip, which is the Tornado. Gain stability and shapeshift into a tornado that damages and launches foes. So basically this will convert you into literally a tornado. You will lose the access to your weapon skills, but you will gain new skills. You have basically you have a constant damage, and you can use these different storms to knock down enemies, apply conditions on them. Even you can charge and knock down enemies. A lot of things you can do with a tornado. It has a fairly long cooldown though, and it will lock you out of your regular skills, so it has a very niche use. But nonetheless, it's a really cool elite that you can use, mostly in PvP, I would say. Okay, now we're gonna take a look at the Arcane utility skills. The thing with the Arcane attacks is that they always have critical damage. No matter your critical chance, an Arcane attack will always crit, so keep that in mind. So first we have the Arcane Brilliance, blast the area, hitting foes with critical damage and healing yourself. Healing effectiveness is increased per target hit. Let's say I'm really low on health. If I use this ability and I hit one or more enemies with it, not only I will heal for an amount, but I will also increase 20% healing per target. So if you use this against, let's say, 5 targets, you're gonna basically double your healing, the healing that you get from this ability. And it's also a combo finisher blast. So let's see how it looks. Then we have the Arcane Blast. Blast your foe with energy from critical damage. So this is basically a fairly powerful projectile that will do critical damage and has a ridiculously long range of 1500. So you can shoot this thing from really far. Let's see. And it also has 3 charges, so you can use it in quick successions for a lot of damage from really far away. Then Arcane Wave, it sort of resembles Arcane Blast, but this is a combo finisher blast. It's obviously like an AoE type of effect, and it will also hit all the enemies for critical damage, but it has a lower range of only 900. Let's see it one more time. And then we have Arcane Shield, which is like the defensive options for the Arcane utilities. It will block 3 attacks, it will break the stun, and then it will explode for critical damage. So once the shield is broken from the attacks that you will block from your enemies, it will explode and will hurt your enemies as well. This is how it looks. And then we have Arcane Power, which will basically make the next 5 attacks that you use critical hits. It also grants you a bonus of Ferocity, which it's a damage modifier that will make your critical hits hit even harder. So let's see. Any ability that I use, I have 2 stacks. The abilities that I'm going to use are going to definitely be a critical hit. And last but not least, we have the Conjure weapons utilities for the Elementalist. Basically, this type of utility will make you conjure an elemental weapon that you don't normally have access to, let's say axe or hammers or bows that are not normally like weapons that the elementalist can use. And when you summon them, you can actually have a copy for yourself and then a second copy that then an ally or you can pick later. So as you can see, I'm gonna use the frostbow. I'm gonna have a frostbow here, frostbow abilities, and then there's gonna be a second frostbow. So the frostbow abilities are basically the auto attack, a rapid volley that will put vulnerability on it, a damage fan that will put shield, and this is probably one of the most powerful abilities, is the Ice Storm that does a lot of damage and puts a lot of bleed as well. So you can see it here in action. And then finally we have the 5th ability, Deep Freeze, that it takes a bit of time to cast and it's a slow moving projectile, but if it hits an enemy it will freeze him for a long time. So it's sort of like a high risk, high reward ability. Okay, let's see it in action. And as you can see, after 30 seconds the conjured weapon will disappear from your hand and will also disappear from the ground if nobody grabbed it, or you didn't grab it before your first copy of the weapon disappeared. So that's basically how these utilities work. Let's see, the Flame Axe basically has auto attack that will grind to might as well. This is a second attack that is a blast finisher. You have sort of like a burning retreat one, then you have a ring of fire one. Let's pick up the second axe. And then you have this leap that will attack and cause burning. So it's a fairly offensive ability with some burning and some power-based attacks. Pretty cool. Then we have the Lightning Hammer, which is a very powerful direct damage sort of weapon. You have the auto attack chain that on the 3rd hit is a blast finisher. So this hits like a truck basically. Then you have the Lightning Leap that will make you leap and also grant you quickness that will make you attack faster. Then you grab the second Lightning Hammer.
Must lift with legs.
Then you have the Wind Blast that will launch your foe with a Vanishing Smash. So basically you launch your foe backwards. Then you have a Lightning Storm, resembles to the storm from the Glyph, but it's a lot more short duration. And you also have your own version of the Static Field, like we saw on the staff weapon, but you have it as well on the Lightning Hammer. Also we have the Earth Shield, which is sort of like a defensive weapon. You have an auto attack that puts a lot of bleed and gives you bleeding, a bit of barrier, and cripple at the end. Then you have Stone Sheet that will block the next attack, and if you successfully blocked it, you will gain Tectonic Shift that will allow you to gain barrier every second. Then you have Magnetic Surge, which is sort of a daze. You basically attack your target and daze it. Then you have Magnetic Shield that will pull nearby foes to you. A pretty cool attack. And finally Fortify, which is sort of like Obsidian Flesh. This basically will make you invulnerable and you can defend yourself with it. So that's the Earth Shield. And last but not least, we have the elite version of the Conjure weapons, which is the Fiery Greatsword. You have a two-handed Fiery Greatsword that has a lot of a really strong auto attack. You can use the Fiery Eruption that will put a lot of burning ticks. Then you have the Fiery Wheel that will cripple your enemy, and basically it's also a movement option. You have the Fiery Rush that will make you basically rush to your enemy for a big hit and will remove movement impaired conditions. And finally you have a Firestorm as well. So this is a really hard hitting weapon that you can use as an elite option for the Elementalist. And that's basically it, guys. We saw all the weapon skills on all the attunements and all the utility skills that the Elementalist can access to. So hopefully after seeing this video you have a much better idea of what the Elementalist can bring to the table. It has a lot of abilities, and it has a lot of access to a lot of different attacks and utilities. It's a fairly complex class, but trust me, once you get familiar with it, the possibilities are endless. I've been playing Elementalist for more than 4 years and I've never got bored of it, because you can always tweak stuff and try different combinations with the attunements, with the weapon skills, etc. So it's a fairly balanced class, my personal favorite. Next time, on the next episode, we're gonna go have a look through all the trait lines that the Elementalist has to sort of discuss how can you improve everything that we saw here with the traits. And then we're gonna keep moving forward on more in-depth look at the abilities and playstyle of the Elementalist. So hope you like this video and expect this sort of series to continue. Hopefully it will take a while, but I'm determined to do this sort of thing for all the classes. So thank you for watching and see you on the next one.